Hi everyone! So I know that this video might seem like it's quite late coming, considering that the Walking Dead finale aired a month ago. But if you've been on the internet for the past month, you'll see that in terms of the Walking Dead, the finale is what everyone's talking about. You know, in particular, who it was that was, spoiler alert, Lucille. So basically in this video I'm going to go through each person who was in the lineup and give my thoughts on whether or not I think they could potentially be the victim. Obviously this video is going to contain huge spoilers for both the comic and the TV show, so if you're not caught up already, pause this video, get yourself caught up, and then come back and see if you agree or disagree with some of my points. I've got my phone here because I do tend to ramble on about stuff that's not needed in terms of like who I think got it and why, blah 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 blah. So I've just made a couple of notes so that I don't go off on a tangent. The predictions, or rather my opinion on why someone may or may not have been killed. I'm not going to do anything to do with camera angles or what the point of view could see, like rocks on the floor, the RV, trees in the background. I have a feeling that it's going to be slightly tweaked, and what we see in episode 1 season 7, if that's when we're going to see the scene, I have a feeling that it's going to be slightly different. Camera angles obviously will be changed, so you know, trying to base it off of camera angles and who he pointed the bat at which time. I mean, if you've watched it you can clearly see, I mean there's one point where I think he goes from Eugene to Rosita with the bat in the space of one word, and that's just not possible. So I think it's going to be all different. So I don't want to make any predictions based on, oh, it must be this person, because when the head goes down they can see this rock on the floor, and when you have a full shot you can see that the people who are in front of those particular rocks are these people, because I don't think it's going to be anything to do with that. I think they purposely just kind of messed it all up for that reason. So the first person is Glenn. Obviously, huge spoiler alert if you've read the comics or know of the comics. I think a lot of people know by now that the person who ends up being picked by Negan to get the bat is Glenn in the comics, which, you know, he is obviously a huge character both in the TV show and the comics, so Robert Kirkman was definitely not afraid to go and kill one of his main characters. So in the comics, Negan still says the line that he's taking it like a champ. So, and Glenn in the comics and Glenn in the TV show, they don't look that much different in terms of their build. They are both quite small, skinny guys. They don't really have much muscle on them, or, you know, they don't look like Abraham or anything like that. So if Glenn in the comics can take it like a champ and, you know, survive the first hit, then it's very possible that Glenn in the TV show would be able to take that first hit like a champ. And obviously Glenn dying in the comics sort of sets off a story arc for Maggie where she becomes the leader of the Hilltop. And if they wanted to do that in the TV show, it's a very good motivator for Maggie to become the leader, you know, by losing Glenn. He hasn't been physically injured from what we can see, unlike people like Daryl, who's been shot, Eugene, who's been beaten up a little bit. He hasn't got any physical injuries, so he would be one of the people in the lineup who could take the first hit. And in terms of character popularity, I would say that he is up there with being one of the popular characters. They said that it would be a beloved character who gets it. They could be lying, they could be pulling our legs with that one, but if it is a beloved character, it could very well be Glenn for that reason. And it might also be, Negan might also be sort of getting him back, like payback, because he jumps out of line when Negan threatens to kill Maggie. So Negan could be like, I am actually going to get you back for that. Or that could be the thing that saves him, because Negan does say, I'll give you that one, it's an emotional moment, I get that you're jumping out of line. So I don't think, from what I can tell from Negan, obviously he's a bad guy, but from what I can tell, from how he comes across, he doesn't seem like the kind of person to like go back on his word. If he says he's going to do something, he'll do it. So if he's saying to Glenn, I'll give you that one, I'm not going to, you know, do anything because you did that, I feel like he's not someone who'll be like, well, actually, you did come out of that line and that pissed me off, so I am going to get you. So the next person is Rosita. She's strong, she's toned, but she doesn't look physically strong in terms of, you know, I don't want to be sexist because I'm a girl, but she doesn't look as strong as even maybe some of the weakest males, just because of her build. So she might not be able to take that first hit. And she's not a hated character, but I wouldn't say in terms of, you know, she's not up there with Daryl and Rick and Glenn and those kind of characters. She's not up there with them. So most people might say if it was her that it was a bit of a cop-out because we're not losing a beloved character. The next one is Daryl. He's not my favourite character, but I do like him. But I do have to say that, you know, from what I've seen, he is probably the most popular character in The Walking Dead. So if they were to kill him, it would be like the biggest shock in terms of, because he's the most popular character, it would be the biggest shock because of that. But he's been shot in the shoulder. You can clearly see when he comes out of that van, his skin is this grey ashy colour. He's got all this blood still coming off. He's sweating. He's had a lot of blood loss. I mean, he's not even kneeling on the floor. If you have a look at the lineup, he's actually sat down because he clearly can't physically be on his knees. In terms of them killing off a big character, if they did it to Daryl, then well done to them, because, you know, they're definitely showing, you know, no character is safe, nobody is safe. But I don't think it would fit with the story. I really do not think that Daryl would be able to take that first hit with the extent of his injury that he has. The next person is Michonne. Out of the women in the lineup, and probably, in fact, out of every woman that's ever been in The Walking Dead, Michonne is definitely the strongest and the most capable of everything. And she's got that nice dreadlock padding on her head as well, so if it was going to be any woman who could take that first hit, it would be Michonne. Also, she has now become Rick's girlfriend, and the two women in the TV show, at least, that have been involved with Rick, Laurie, his wife, and then Jesse in season 5 and 6, have both died. And I think it's something that will always drive Rick's story, and because Rick is the main character, they always need something like a trigger point within a certain number of seasons. They then get something that will trigger Rick, and his actions will change, his demeanour will change, and that happened with Laurie. Obviously he went a bit crazy, and then with Jesse it was more that Carl got shot in the eye, but he sort of, you know, had the strength to defeat the walkers after that. But I think if Negan knew, again, he doesn't hit women, so I don't think it's Michonne for that reason, but if Negan knew that that was Rick's girlfriend, I think to push Rick down as a leader even further, he'd choose Michonne. Also, something that somebody said that I've seen somebody say before, and it's one of those sort of crazy out there kind of theories, but in an earlier episode, I think it was East, the previous episode before the finale, Michonne and Rick are in bed together in the morning, and Michonne takes an apple off the nightstand and takes a bite out of it, and Rick does as well, but she's the first person to take a bite out of it, and it kind of parallels the story of Adam and Eve, where she took the forbidden fruit and they were punished for it. So obviously Michonne getting the bat would be punishment, and it would be punishment for Rick because he would be losing his girlfriend, his friend, his, you know, support system, and obviously it would change Rick's character. There would be a shift there, and Carl as well, because Carl has definitely come to love Michonne as a mum. But I don't think it's Michonne because she's a woman, and Negan doesn't kill women with the bat. And I really don't want it to be Michonne either, because she is badass and she needs to stay badass. The next person is Abraham. Clearly looking at him, out of everyone in the lineup, he is the one who you would automatically think could take the bat. He looks physically stronger than all of them. He definitely portrays himself as being emotionally stronger than all of them, because when Negan goes past each person, they either don't give him eye contact at all. He gets to Abraham, and Abraham just rises himself on his knees and faces up to him and is basically saying to him, "You don't scare me." And I think that pissed Negan off. Negan wants to make them all terrified of him so that they'll do what he says. He can see that Abraham is somebody who, in the face of death, doesn't care and will stand up to him. So how much of a compliant worker will he be for Negan? Not very, I don't think. So I think Negan would not want him, well, he'd want him working for him, but I think Negan can see that Abraham will probably put up a bit of resistance, and Negan does not like that. So I think Negan would get him back by just killing him off. I wouldn't say he was up there with Daryl and Glenn and Rick in terms of popularity, but he's definitely not one of the minor characters anymore, and they have been integrating him into the story more, giving him lots. I mean, he's the one who has all the funny lines. I mean, in a show about a zombie apocalypse where somebody dies every other day, really the only person that actually makes you laugh when you're watching the show is Abraham, because of the lines that they give him. So it makes him more lovable. And in the comics, he dies before this point. He gets the arrow to the eye, which is what happened to Denise. So they obviously swapped out that character death. They swapped it for somebody different. It could be that they did that because they wanted to save a more epic death for Abraham, which would be this one. Or it could be because they like the character of Abraham so much and they want to develop him more, so they just changed it to a different character to let Abraham live on. He also has now started up a new romance with Sasha, and this one is different than Rosita. I think with Rosita it was just sex. There wasn't really any romance involved there, but I think with Sasha he has actually grown to have feelings for her, and they talk about in the RB on the last episode, they talk about, he especially talks about having kids and thinks that he could have a kid and he wants to have a kid in this world. So, you know, with a character sort of having hope and looking to the future, normally that means you are screwed. There is also this theory going around about the Orange Crush soda. So the Orange Crush soda is a drink that Tara really likes. Denise and Tara obviously became a couple, and Denise wanted to treat Tara by getting her this soda. But obviously, before she can get this soda to Tara, Denise is killed with the arrow. The Orange Crush comes into it with Abraham because it's orange, which is the colour of Abraham's hair, and crush is because the person gets their head crushed by the bat. And because Denise got Abraham's comic death, people seem to think that it's linked in that way. It's an interesting theory. I don't know if... I think that would be more of a coincidence than the writers actually trying to plant that. So the next person is Maggie, who clearly the whole reason that they're on this journey is because she's just had some kind of pregnancy scare. She's in a lot of pain, she's sweating, she looks very ashen and grey. Add to that fact that she's pregnant, and she hasn't really been getting the vitamins that you need when you're pregnant. Add to that she's a woman. Add to that she's a very small woman. I do not think that it is Maggie that it happens to, because she would not be able to take that first hit. Rick. He is the main character. The story is Rick's. The story is Rick's from the beginning of the comic. The story is Rick's from the beginning of the TV show. If it was Rick that it happened to, it's not impossible, especially if this wasn't a TV show, especially if this was really happening. There's no writers to, you know, say, oh, well, he's the main character, so we can't kill him off. If this was real life, it's completely possible that it could be Rick. But in terms of it being a TV show and it being Rick's show, basically, it would be probably the biggest shock. It probably would be a bigger shock than Daryl, because of the fact that Rick is the one who drives the story. But because he is the main character, I really don't see them killing him off. I do see Rick dying in the future, but that will probably be on either the very last episode or of the whole thing, or the episode before that. But definitely not yet. The next person is Sasha. Pretty much the same reasons as Rosita. She's small lady, very slender, don't think she'd be able to take that hit. She's been in the show for a while, but I don't think she's got up to that popular character status, so I don't think she's one of the beloved characters that we think about. And also a point that I've just got on Sasha is the fact that as soon as Negan goes to pick the person, if it was Sasha, pretty sure Abraham would have jumped up and, you know, sacrificed himself at that point. And that goes for so many other characters. Like, if he picked Carl, Rick and Michonne would have stood up. If he picked Michonne, Rick and Carl would have stood up. If he picked Rick, Michonne, Carl, maybe everybody would have stood up. If he picked Abraham, Rosita and Sasha may not have stood up, but they may have done some sort of protest. If he picked Maggie, Glenn would have stood up. If he picked Daryl, Rick would have stood up. If he picked Eugene, maybe Abraham would have stood up as well. So there's so many characters that would have stood up at for certain characters if they get picked, which is why I think that the scene that we saw isn't exactly how it goes, unless they pick someone who really nobody would stand up for, which is very sad. Which kind of brings me on to the next person, which is Aaron. This is the character that we've known for the least amount of time. We came to know of him towards the end of season 5, so we've known him for about a season and a half. So he's definitely the most minor character out of everybody, so it would probably be the least shocking. And it may also be viewed as a cop-out because there are more main characters there, and it feels like this is the kind of death that, as much as we don't want a main character to go, if you're gonna have an epic death scene, you want to give it to a deserving character. I know that sounds kind of twisted, but you would rather the payoff would be better if it was a main character. Okay, so yeah, Carl, young boy, very skinny, wouldn't be able to take the first hit. Again, Rick would not sit there and let that happen. As soon as that bat landed on Carl and the word "it" was said, Rick would have rugby tackled Negan to the ground. And the last person who was in the lineup was Eugene. You can see by looking at Eugene, looking at his stature, he may be like a little scaredy cat. He's getting braver, but you know, he's always been one of the most scared out of the guys. Even though he comes across like that, his physical stature, he's a big, tall guy. So he could very well take that first hit, but he looks physically like he'd be able to take it. Emotionally, not so much. Again, he's not as beloved as many of the other characters in the lineup, but he's definitely got that lovable sense about him, like the fact that he is so scared and the fact that he comes out with these lines where you're just like, what did he just say? But he, as much as Abraham makes you laugh for the funny things that he says, Eugene kind of makes you laugh as well. It is a bit of a pity laugh from me, but you know, it's kind of like, oh, Eugene, oh. So it would be very traumatic if it was Eugene who got. He also had a goodbye scene, kind of a goodbye scene with Rick, where he basically gave Rick the instructions on how to make bullets, and that it doesn't mean that, oh, that's the only thing that Eugene can do, that's it, he's useless, you can get rid of him now and we don't need him for anything else, because he does have other good qualities about him. But it's something that, just like with the whole DC thing, they tried their hardest to keep Eugene alive and give him the most security because he had something very important to give. It's kind of the same with the bullets. He has something very important to contribute to the group, and once he's given that secret away, he's not as valuable anymore, or he doesn't need so much protection because he doesn't have this knowledge that nobody else knows. And also he had like a goodbye scene with Abraham, and they've sort of had a bit of a rocky patch, and for them to make up with each other, it doesn't really bode well for Eugene. So out of all the people in the lineup, my first initial thought after watching the show, without watching it back, without watching camera angles or looking to see what everybody else thought, as soon as I'd watched the finale, my initial thought of who it was Abraham. And that's purely because, looking at the lineup, he looks like the person who would be able to take that hit the most. That purely and simply, that's why I thought it was him. And then obviously I went and saw lots of people's videos on who they thought it was and why they thought it was these people. I think the main four that I've seen are Glenn, Daryl, Abraham and Michonne. I'd rule out Daryl because of the blood loss and him being physically injured and everything. But I would say Glenn, Abraham, Michonne. Those three seem like the most likely out of all the characters. If it's Abraham, I'll be the least surprised because that's the person who I think I'm going to stick with in terms of that's who I think it is. I'd like to be surprised. I'd like to know when it comes on that I didn't know all along which character is the one that got it. I'm gonna place my bets, but I'm not actually gonna bet, on Abraham. My top three would be Abraham, Glenn, Michonne. So if it's one of those three, I'm not going to be surprised really. So let me know if you agree with who I think it is, if you've got any other theories on why it could be Abraham, or if you've got any theories as to why it could be other people. I really do want to know who people think it is and why they think it is those people, because I think there's so many theories going around, so many predictions, so many conclusions as to why it's this person and this person, and I'm still not 100%, like I say, like, oh, I think it's Abraham. Honestly, I'm not 100% on anybody, and I'm not going to be doing a video on, oh, it's this person because this happens, and this happens. Because honestly, I've seen arguments for every single character, and some of the points are like, that couldn't happen because of this, but some of the points that people make, I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. So it could literally be any character. So I'm not 100% set on who I think it is. So yeah, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.